Welcome to our first video from 2022, and we want to give you some comic insight on Classics Illustrated. Classics Illustrated is a publisher that existed from 1941 through 1971, and they did actually do exactly what the name says, which is Classics Illustrated. So they've taken literature, famous literature, that a lot of us may have read or covered in school, and they adapted them to comics. And they were very popular in schools, and they also were sold on newsstands. And it trained people to read. Instead of just reading about superheroes and Western stories, it introduced them to the classics. First Men in the Moon, H.G. Wells. Master of the World, Jules Verne. Journey to the Center of the Earth, Jules Verne. The Story of Abraham Lincoln. William Shakespeare, Macbeth. And there's Hamlet, Huckleberry Finn. There were quite a few of the titles published, and they sold very well. But the publisher went out of business in 1971. And you can probably see why that would be the case when you examine society. People stopped reading, or at least they greatly reduced their reading. And so after that happened, a few publishers picked up some of the rights to these, but they really didn't sell well. And so a lot of these are just blowing in the wind. They also did some special issues, and all of them were educational. You know, a lot of these you can see they were meant to teach you. The Illustrated Story of the Civil War, Time and Space, The Illustrated Story of Communications, The Illustrated Story of the Jungle. So these really were a worthwhile publication. It's very sad that they don't exist anymore. They are not difficult to acquire. I mean, as you can see, I've managed to gather a few of these over the past 15, 18 years, and they're still readily available on eBay, and they're not that expensive, which is great. And once Gilberton, the publisher, realized that these were popular, then they decided to bring in an even younger crowd. And so then they published Classics Illustrated Junior. There's The Little Mermaid. Probably the younger crowd doesn't know that The Little Mermaid has been around for some time. But here's a few of the, excuse my poor filming. Let me spread these out. So we've got The Little Mermaid, we've got Rapunzel, The Wizard of Oz, and some other titles that I'm not familiar with. And so Classics Illustrated Junior came out in the mid-50s, and it existed up till about 1967. And then that's when the younger crowd stopped reading also. So Classics Illustrated, a real, just brings you back to a time when mankind enjoyed literature. And I had to take literature in grade school, and it was rough. We had to read Huckleberry Finn. Gosh, the one that I really did not enjoy reading was called The Scarlet Letter. And it was long, and it was hard. And I'm glad that I did finish it though and somehow pass that class. So that's our coverage for today is Classics Illustrated. In our next video, we are going to touch on Bettie Page, pinup queen from the 1950s. So that will be an enjoyable video, and we'll kick that out this coming week.